So if you're watching this video, chances are that you've been playing with the idea of starting your own freelance career, but you don't really know if you have what it takes. In that case, I will introduce you to 3 qualities I think are super important for any freelancer starting out, maybe even more important than a good portfolio. These are 3 qualities that helped me secure my first job, even though, honestly, my art really wasn't that good. And on top of that, at the end of the video, I will show you my portfolio, the one that I had when I started out, so you can look at your art and maybe compare it to where you are compared to where I was when I started out. And hopefully you will see that you really don't need to be a AAA level artist to land your first jobs. Hey guys, and welcome to q+art. My name is Marie and I'm a freelance illustrator. So when people decide that they want to jump into a freelance career, oftentimes they will lack either one or both of these things, which are either skill or experience. In my case, it was definitely both. And just as a disclaimer before I start with the 3 qualities, when you want to become a freelance illustrator, your art will always be the most important thing to focus on and to improve on. But I do think that there are skills that can be super useful for bridging the gap between being a complete beginner and being a little bit more professional. And those qualities are ultimately what will set you apart from all of the other beginners out there who are looking to start their career and looking to find their first jobs. Of course, this is all from my experience, so take everything I say in the following minutes with a grain of salt. So the kind of companies that you will work for as a beginner are usually companies that either can't afford to or don't want to pay fair wages. But no experienced artist wants to work for these low wages. So these kind of companies are always looking for new upcoming artists who will be willing to work for low wages. And that will be people like you and me who still lack the kind of experience and skill you need to have to land better paying jobs. So they need us to basically produce art for cheap, and we need them so we can collect more experience to ultimately land better paying jobs. And that's sadly how it is. And I do think we need to have an ongoing conversation and push for better wages, but that's actually a whole nother topic for another time. So what I'm trying to say is that there are companies out there that are not necessarily looking for the best artist for the job because they know they won't be able to pay them. They are looking for people who are willing to work for the low pay that they offer. And of course, it's always up to you if you want to take on that offer and work for wages that are that low. But again, I feel like that's a whole nother conversation for another video. And of course, even companies that hire beginner artists are still looking for some certain level of skill. So you definitely will have to reach some sort of basic skill level to meet their requirements. But I think you'd be surprised to realize how low this actually can be. They're definitely not looking for AAA game quality art. So what else are they looking for, and what kind of skills should you might have to set yourself apart from other applicants? Was that grammatically correct? You get what I mean, right? Skill number 1, consistency. Your art doesn't need to be god level to land your first jobs. You don't even need to be able to draw lots of different things. But what you do know how to draw, you should be able to pull off on a consistent level. For me, at the time, that was portraits. That's just something that I liked to draw most at the time, and so I put a ton of them into my portfolio. And clients that looked at my portfolio would be able to tell that if they commissioned me to paint like 10 different portraits, they would all look consistently good. And because my portfolio consisted of a bunch of portraits, the first job I ever landed was painting a shit ton of portraits. So pick something you're good and consistent at and build your portfolio around that. If you like drawing creatures, make sure you know your stuff and put your best works into your portfolio. If you're not comfortable with drawing portraits or humans and every time you draw a face it just looks completely different than the other time before, don't put it into your portfolio because the clients will be able to tell that you haven't reached that level of consistency and confidence yet. Quality number 2 is accountability. Clients need to know that they can depend on you. They will often give you several illustrations at a time that need to be finished in a certain time frame. If they hire you, they want to be sure that you can pull that off. So don't take on jobs that are just too far out of your comfort zone, where you just know you probably won't be able to pull it off. Or if you've never worked with a tight deadline before and you're not sure if you can paint 10 portraits in 5 days, don't take on those jobs, because chances are you might fail and then you will leave a bad impression on the client and they will probably not want to work with you again. Make sure you tell the clients what you can or can't do, because it's 10 times better to say, look, I'd prefer to only work on one illustration at a time for now because I'm not quite that experienced yet, than taking on a job that's too much and then completely messing everything up. And trust me, I've been there. When I started taking private commissions, I took on way too many and way too much, and I ended up having to refund a lot of the clients because I just couldn't pull off the job, and it was the most embarrassing thing that I ever done in my life. So don't do this. Make up whatever you lack in experience or maybe even skill with etiquette and professionalism. If they know they can depend on you, they will want to work with you again. Quality number 3. That's not 3. What is this? I want it to be cool and be like this, but this just looks... What is this? Hello? And finally, quality number 3. Be easy to work with. And that sounds pretty straightforward, but I think that's not necessarily you think about a lot, especially when you start out. But being easy to work with is, again, so important for building these business relationships, because you want to keep working with people. So what does this mean? And I'm actually going to look at my list because I'm really bad at remembering stuff. Always be polite and friendly. Answer emails as soon as you can, but only during work hours. Do me a favor and don't look at your emails right before going to sleep. It will ruin your night. I promise you. Don't pretend to know shit you don't and then panic. Reach out to your art director if you have questions, instead of messing things up because you're too proud to admit you don't know how to proceed. That's a big one. If you don't like how an art director is handling you or a problem that comes up, approach them about it in a professional and calm manner. After all, they are people too, and they might mess up and not realize it. Take criticism. That one is also huge. I can't stress this enough. An art director's job is literally to constantly give you feedback and criticism, and they're not going to beat around the bush with it either. They're going to be direct and honest. So if that's something you can't take, then honestly, you're really in the wrong profession, because you will receive critique on a daily basis. So just take on whatever critique you get with as much grace as possible and try your best to fix things. I can't tell where the hell in the script I am. And lastly, stay humble. Just don't be an ass. As a beginner, you're here to learn and to grow. And that's it. Those are the 3 qualities, and I feel like I've named maybe 6 of them, so are they really 3 or are they a lot more? I don't know. These are the qualities you need to start into your freelance career, even though your art may be still a work in progress. And since I promised you I'm going to show you my portfolio the way that it was when I started out, let's do it. Alright, actually, let me do this. Alright, let's do this. I think this is the illustration that I opened my portfolio with. It's a portrait, and I knew those were my strong suits, so I put a portrait first. Honestly, looking at it now, I can tell that the anatomy of the face is pretty wonky. But at the time, it was definitely one of my stronger, if not my strongest work. This was definitely my favorite piece at the time. I was really proud of this. Notice how I put my strongest work first. Also notice, while this is a nice painting per se, if you look really closely at it, you can tell I really had no idea how to render leather, how to render fur, even the metal. I was just winging it. Completely just like making shit up. I didn't know what I was doing. And another portrait. And again, anatomy-wise, questionable, but it was definitely my best work at the time. And I honestly still like it a lot, even though this is, I think, one of the oldest things in my portfolio. This is still in my portfolio as of now. It just moved on further to the back. And another portrait, and another portrait. The mermaid. This is a really good example because I originally intended this to be a full-on illustration with a background and everything. And I totally failed. I messed it up so bad. I was completely outside of my comfort zone and I wasn't able to pull it off at all. So I ended up just cutting out the mermaid and just slapping it in a gray background, and I named it a sketch in my portfolio. I was like, this is just a simple sketch of a mermaid, even though this was 100% the best thing I could do at that time. Oh. So this is really weird because this is a work in progress and I have really no idea what I was thinking at the time, because why would I put that into my portfolio? Like, the smart thing would have been to get off of my ass and just finish this illustration and put the finished illustration into my portfolio, but I guess I was scared I wasn't gonna finish this the way that I wanted to. So I definitely was outside of my comfort zone. I don't think I finished this ever. Don't put whips into your portfolio. It's just unnecessary. These are Ghibli studies. Honestly, if you ask people, they will tell you left and right, don't put studies into your portfolio. I did it anyways. And they're still in my portfolio. More studies, completely ignoring any advice. I think I put them here because I wanted to show that I was able to render different kind of textures and surfaces. What I should have done really was to make more illustrations that showcase different textures and surfaces. Instead, I put studies of fruit into my portfolio. And more studies of fruit. And environments, even though I had no experience in environments whatsoever, as you can tell. What is this? What is it? I put this into my portfolio. Would you look at that? Another environment. And another environment. And this is the closing illustration. And this is the only illustration in this portfolio that had both characters and a background. So if you look at this, most of the pieces in here are either character-centric or portraits, or for some reason environments, but let's just ignore that for a second and focus on the portraits, because the first couple of jobs that I got were exclusively painting portraits. And I think that's because the clients were able to tell that A, I liked painting portraits, and B, the portraits in my portfolio were the most consistent thing. If you look at the other stuff in here, like the environments, they varied in skill level and also generally weren't at a very high skill level. And I think the portraits really were the only thing that I would say even now are, were decent enough and consistent enough to be considered somewhat professional. And honestly, I love that I got to paint like a shit ton of portraits at the beginning of my career, because now that is something that's so comfortable for me and something that I know I can always fall back on to, because it's inside my comfort zone and I know I can't fuck it up anymore, Because I do fuck things up. Still, sometimes I take on jobs that are outside of my comfort zone, even though I told you in this video not to do this, because I don't realize that they're that far outside of my comfort zone, and then I stress and I cry about it, and it's a lot. But I guess that's just part of being a beginner at anything, really. Because I still do lack a lot of skill in many areas, and I'm very aware of that. So I'll just continue to practice and work at the same time. So in conclusion, while I definitely made this video to show you your art doesn't have to be top-notch to get your first jobs, I also sometimes wish I had waited just a little bit longer with starting to work, because now I have to juggle working as a freelancer as well as still continuing to study and improve. And sometimes that's super stressful. Ultimately, I don't regret any of the decisions I've made when it comes to my professional life so far, but sometimes I wonder if maybe it would have been better to take some more time and hone my craft some more, because there's no shame in that. So whatever you decide to do, whether you want to jump in right now, right away, or you just want to wait a little bit and gather more skill and even maybe gather more experience working in private commissions before you start working for professional clients. It's really up to you, and none of the ways to do this are superior than the other or better or more successful. You just need to figure out what's best for you in your specific situation. Either way, you got this. See you later. Bye.